Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Seven Exits podcast with your favorite empowerment psychologist, our psychologist in residence, Dr. Rosina Bakari. How are you doing this morning, Dr. B?
I am doing well. It's always great to be here. I'm looking forward to the topic.
Okay, yeah, me too, because this is a topic that people talk about a lot. Why we believe we are not enough. Oh my goodness, I know that has just hit a lot of people where they live. And so that's right, Dr. B, you are bringing to us today the four reasons people believe they are not enough. And so I'm really excited for this because, like I said, we're always talking about this. And this belief that so many of us have has such an impact on our mindset, how we move through the world, our interactions with ourselves and other people. And I mean, it's painful. It really is painful. And so not only are you going to address these topics, but these four reasons, but you're also going to tell us what can we do about it. And a lot of times people just identify what the cause is without telling us, hey, how do we get out of this? How do we get out of this belief and take a different direction in our life? So I'm really grateful. We're really grateful for this morning, Dr. B. So before you get started, I just wanted to go over the four reasons that you list. Number one, childhood messages that stuck. And one of the examples that you give is if you grew up hearing you'll never be good enough, or why can't you be more like, we may still carry these wounds. So that's number one, childhood messages that stuck. Number two, you list as comparing yourself to others. Number three, mistakes that turned into self-doubt. And number four is emotional abandonment. So those are all really juicy. Which one would you like to start with first, Dr. B?
Well, let's just go down the list. How about that? What was the first one?
Okay, childhood messages that stuck.
This is my favorite one. Talking about childhood experience is one of my favorite topics, period. Because I know there's a group of people out there who believe that we can just move on from whatever has occurred in our lives. But that really does not work in getting us to our optimal positions in life, whether we're talking about relationships or careers or friendships or entrepreneurship. So when we can come face to face with all of the joy and the pain that we have faced, then whatever we face ahead of us will be prepared for. But I'll be darned if those things that we're trying to push away will not resurface and scare the boop out of us if we're not prepared for it, right? Because we don't want that pain to touch the old pain. We don't want the new pain to touch the old pain. So anyway, getting us back to this question, one of the things that happens is that we end up not feeling enough when we don't address these childhood what I like to call C's. That's what they're called in the new book, 7X's. These subtle experiences of emotional disempowerment, right? Often occur in childhood. They can also obviously occur in adulthood, but they occur in adulthood a lot easier when we have not addressed how they have occurred in childhood. And so not dealing with these childhood issues where someone told us in no uncertain terms that we were not enough. Something about us was not enough, or that we had to constantly earn our enoughness. We had to earn it with grades. We had to earn it with chores. We had to earn it by getting up and going to worship. We had to earn it by being obedient. And so we can take in those messages without processing them deeply, and they walk into our adulthood lives, and we start showing up in ways that we don't understand. There's something that we still carry about not being enough because we haven't taken time to really dig into the messages that made us believe that in the first place.
Okay. All right. So number two, comparing yourself to others. That's a big one.
Can I just start with social media? Limit your time. I'm not going to say stay off social media because I don't stay off social media. And there's some of my stuff that I want you to see on social media. So I'm not going to say stay off of social media. I'm certainly going to say that is the world of comparison, even for those of us who feel fully empowered. When we see something that we want, ooh, it's so hard not to compare and start judging in that comparison too. We judge others, we judge ourselves, we judge processes that we don't want to engage in. And so when we compare ourselves to what we do not have, we have no choice but to delve into the world of lack, 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 lack. When we compare, we lack. And so when we compare ourselves to others, it's almost inevitable that you're going to not feel like you are enough. No matter how much you have, you are not enough. And so we have to be prepared to be our own measuring stick. It's perfectly fine for us to have our goals and objectives based on who we are, what our experiences are, and the depths in which we are willing to go to participate in any area of our lives. That's enough. We don't need to compare how fast we get there or what it takes for us to get there versus someone else, or who gets the prize when they get there. But as long as we are comparing ourselves to others, we are inviting a sense of not enough.
That's interesting because when you say the whole comparing to others, that's the culture, right? That's the whole thing of competition. You have to be better than the next person. That's like, it's just something that we're kind of conditioned with. So, no wonder a lot of us, are always comparing ourselves to others. Yeah.
Not only is it the culture, but at the risk of slipping into a political discussion, which I'm not, I don't want to go there, but I do want us to understand that capitalism requires purchase. Bottom line, it requires purchase. And the biggest purchase is not feeling enough because I have to sell you a problem in order to sell you a product. That's how it works. And so there's some intent behind it for this so-called system to even work. So if I convince you that you're not pretty enough, I get to sell you all my makeup products. If I can convince you you're not thin enough, I get to sell you all my weight loss products. If I get to convince you that you're not empowered enough, I get to sell you my empowerment products, right? I'm included in that. Everybody who has a product has to first sell you the lack in order to sell you the product, right? And so there's not, and that's how the system works, right? And so how do you use the system to your advantage based on your goals and not someone else's goals? That's the question. I want to be pretty. I have makeup on right now. I have no problem with that. I buy makeup. But if I'm buying this makeup and now I'm constantly buying it because I really do want to look like Beyonce, right? Then now I'm buying makeup that I probably can't afford to buy, right? Trying to look a certain way. Now I'm wearing it in places that I don't necessarily need to wear it. Now I don't even like myself without the makeup. So there's a difference. So if I can engage in these participatory ways of being in the world without losing myself, without diminishing myself to the point where I don't feel like I'm enough, then I'm good. But if you unconsciously participate in this system of capitalism, then you come up feeling like you're not enough, you're short, you lack something. And so you buy, you want, you judge, and still don't feel like you're enough. Start with not comparing.
Thank you. That was a word right there. I hope people were taking notes. This is when people are gonna have to keep rewinding, rewinding. That was, yeah, that was really powerful. Um, Number three, mistakes that turned into self-doubt. How does that get us to think that we're not enough just by making mistakes?
Yeah, some mistakes are difficult or challenging to get over, and they just last a long time. It could be, for example, divorce. Sometimes after the marriage is over, people are now in a state where they can look at what happened, and they see some of it is they could have done things differently, right? And so because of that, they may feel like I'm not enough. I'll never be in a relationship again. I'm not ready, et cetera, et cetera. Or you put all you lose all your money because you invested in something wrong. And people, there are consequences. So the bigger the consequences of your mistake, in air quotes, because what you do after you realize you've done the wrong thing that determines whether it's a mistake or misstep, right? But the bigger the consequences, the bigger the unwanted consequences when you do something, the easier it is for the feeling to linger that you're not enough. You weren't smart enough, you weren't bright enough, you weren't conscientious enough, you weren't something enough that things did not turn out for you, right? And so as long as we're looking at this mistake as a mistake, we're not processing the direction that it is trying to lead us to. If we can get ourselves to understand that everything is about processing, then every misstep that we take can lead us closer to the step that's going to get us where we really want to go. But not if we take that mistake or that misstep as evidence that we're not enough. The goal is not to take that mistake and then try to figure out how to be enough. The goal is to take that misstep and read it into, if this is what happened now, then how do I shape something different to happen in the future? What do I need to do different? Not how do I need to be enough? That's not the question to engage in. The question is about process. It's not about character or who you are. It's just about process.
Yeah, when you say it like that, it just makes so much sense. And that's one of the things with mistakes, because we're all saying, well, that's why they put erasers on pencils, right? But then we beat ourselves up when we make the mistake. It's like, how crazy is that?
Right. And yet you that there is not a successful person that you will ever run into, excuse me, that did not make some mistakes. And sometimes those big mistakes, right? Mistakes are just part of the path. It means you're walking a journey. Now, of course, we don't want to make mistake after mistake after mistake, although sometimes we do to get where we're going, right? But that's not the goal. But it's what you do with the process, is how you engage in the process of mistake making. Sometimes when I'm working with clients, I urge them to go out and make a mistake. Like, I dare you to do something so daring this week that you may actually fail at it. We like to teach our children or our clients or our friends, we like to teach people how to succeed. One of the most important characteristics that I remind parents is to also teach your child how to fail. Teach them how to fail, right? Don't give them everything that they know they're already going to be successful at, right? Also teach people how to challenge themselves enough that they know how to fall and get back up.
Mm.
And that failure is not evidence of your character. How you deal with failure is evidence of your character.
Mm. Wow. I know you could go on and on and on about that one. Yeah, yeah, but we told people we gonna get through the floor. Okay, but yeah, but please, everybody, feel free to just follow up with Dr. B either on her website at rosanabakari.com, in the comments, in the chat. You know, she does read those and we'll address them on the next podcast next week. So yeah, please just don't hesitate. Okay. Don't hesitate to put some questions in there. We love it. Okay. So let's go on to number 4, which is emotional abandonment. Talk to us about that, Dr. B.
Oh, emotional abandonment. Let me tell you, that's hard for me because I'm sure I still got some abandonment issues going on here, right? So when you have this sense that someone important to you could be a parent, could be a caregiver, could be a boss, could be a friend, could be a child, but someone significant to you do not hold the same reverence for you as you do for them, to the point that you feel abandoned by them. That can be huge. And that's one that can happen at any time. When it happens, anything that happens early on is going to have a profound impact. But that can also happen in our adult lives. Again, often when people have gone through a serious breakup, that can happen. That can happen when people have lost their job, their dream job. So any sort of loss, relationship resulting in loss, can also elicit this sense of abandonment, right? You don't know how to recuperate your sense of identity, your sense of self from that loss. And so it can easily trigger this sense of unworthiness. I'm not enough, especially if you feel like this person was the one who got you, who understood you, who poured into you, right? And so the challenge is not that loss of this relationship. Your challenge, of course, is the investment, your willingness to reinvest your vulnerability into other areas, into other people, into other experiences in your life, right? Because there are a billion people on this earth. And so if you put all your eggs into one basket, that this person is the one who lifts you up forever, then that's a level of vulnerability that honestly you shouldn't be willing to live with, right? Because what happens is that people, things, material things, people, they go away, right? And so we want to hold on to those experiences and people as long as we can, but we don't get to control how people stay, people, places, things, how they stay in our lives, because everything comes with its own energy. But so when we have that loss, it's easy to then suffer a sense of abandonment. And when we feel like we have been abandoned, and sometimes it's difficult for us to identify that as abandonment, but abandonment feels like a lack of trust for anyone to fill a particular space in your life, right? And so you approach people with sort of a idea. When we always say, I don't trust people, that's often a sense of abandonment. Like, what do you mean you don't trust people? Do you trust yourself? Because when you trust yourself, your willingness or ability to trust other people becomes really irrelevant. I don't need to trust you to treat me well. I trust me to treat me well, so that when I'm not treated well, I know exactly what to do. I need to trust people to treat me well. Right? I keep the focus on me. And so, but when I have a sense of abandonment, I'm on guard, right? And it's about me not feeling enough, not feeling worthy, not trusting that people are going to see the beauty and the light in me and respond to that in ways that make me significant to them.
Yeah, and okay, so one of the things I do want to ask is because you've identified some behaviors, but if you can go, just give us some examples of when we're walking through the world feeling like we're not enough. What are some of the adverse behaviors, right, that we display, either with ourselves or with other people or both?
Yeah. Oftentimes people are people carry resistance to getting in relationships, first of all. They tend not to just jump into relationships. So they become real suspicious of people in the first place. The problem with this is that when you are constantly suspicious of of opening your door to relationships, then what happens when you finally open the door, you open them so wide with so many expectations, and the person that you open the door for have no idea what it is that you're doing or why you're letting them in. You know, so then you carry the sense of, but I don't usually, they don't, they're just being them. They're not trying to be the only person you open the door to for the last decade. That's a lot of weight to put on somebody, right? And so one is your resistance to relationships. And then when you do let people in, you tend to be overly cautious about how they are treating you. And so you may have some sensitivity to any signs that you interpret as them, as any signs that you can interpret as them, as you not being significant to them, right? So if they don't call when they said they're going to call, that means you're not significant. If they don't invite you someplace where they went with other friends, that means you're not significant. So all of their behaviors get interpreted, get measured up according to how significant they make you feel. That's a sense of abandonment. When you're judging yourself, you're judging your relationships based on how significant that person makes you feel, that tends to come from a sense of abandonment.
Yeah, thank you for that. And some of the adverse behaviors we exhibit, like say when we have that childhood message that stuck that we weren't enough, are these people who kind of self-sabotage, or like what are some of those behaviors?
Oh yeah, people can certainly self-sabotage, right? That's a good one to bring up when you don't feel like you're enough. Then one of the reasons people self-sabotage is that I think it was Miriam Anderson, talks about your greatest fear is that you may be more powerful. And there's a long verse to that, but that's the bottom line. And so if I don't feel enough, then I can put in obstacles so I don't have to be held to your high expectations. I admit I've been guilty of this, right? And so if I try and if I become anything more, the more I become, the more expectations people have of me. So one can become complacent and just don't put in the effort to be more. Or two, I can put in obstacles where that basically I will know that I'm going to fail at some point, and I won't have to be more, right? So I don't get that proposal in on time. So it's due March 25th. I send it in March 26th. Right. And then I complain that you're not accepting it late. Right. And so there are ways that we self-sabotage, right? But the truth is that internally we're not ready to get to that next level because we are carrying a sense that we're not enough. And so in certain small ways, we start exhibiting behaviors that indicate to us that we are not enough, like being late, not showing up, speaking to people in a wrong term, making adversarial relationships, creating conflict where we go, right? So when we believe we're not enough, we start exhibiting the evidence of it.
Wow, I would have never thought that starting conflict wherever we go as like a response to our belief that we're not. I would have never thought that in a million years. Yeah, thank you.
Yep, absolutely. So, and certainly, if I don't believe that I'm enough, one of the things that does is create judgments. The judgments that I'm carrying about myself are also the judgments that I carry about other people. And so, when you carry so many judgments, then it's easy to create conflict from those judgments.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So, um, and if we take our mistakes and let them turn into self-doubt, do we admit, like, it's one of the adverse behaviors of that, not even admitting if we made a mistake or not taking accountability for certain things in our lives?
That can happen, right? Because depending on those messages that we got, if we have never had room for retribution to say, I made a mistake and have that be okay. Some of us have never experienced a soft enough landing in life where it has been okay to make a mistake. That's real, right? And so if that's been the case, then I'm not admitting when I made a mistake. I've never been able to say I made a mistake and have that be okay, right? So I don't know what that looks like. And so I have to build on that. And so that's why this feeling of I'm not enough can linger so long, because we never explore it. We never talk about it. We never resolve it. We just carry it, and it keeps floating into our lives in different ways where we're trying to cover it up or overcome it, but we don't process it. Right. And so it's possible that we then start to cover up our mistakes.
So could we say somebody who's like a perfectionist, it falls into that category as well?
Well, it depends. Perfectionists are can be a different story. Perfectionists oftentimes they tend to have more procrastination. So they're not necessarily the ones just making mistakes and cover it up. They tend to be more procrastinators because they want it to be perfect. It never gets done. That's your procrastinator. Or you have the perfectionist that everything gets done no matter what. Right? They're not making mistakes. You have plenty of us out there like that, right? They're not making a lot of mistakes. And if they make a mistake, they unmake it real quick. They don't cover it up. They fix it, right? So you have those perfectionists as well. They're not typically willing to just mess things up and then cover them up. That's not typically the perfectionist route.
But can you have a perfectionist that still doesn't believe that they're not enough?
Oh, absolutely. For many perfectionists, that's what drives them. This idea that they have to earn. I have to earn the right to be in this position, whatever this position is. It could be an intimate relationship. They're cooking and cleaning and doing this and bringing this and healing that, and all the things, right? Never putting themselves first. They're serving. It could be their job. They're working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, where everybody else is working 40 to 50 hours a week, right? It could be for their parenting. They're doing everything, filling out the college applications for the kid and making sure they have their uniforms nice and clean. So wherever it is where that attitude or that characteristic invades their lives, then that becomes their motivation of not. It doesn't look like they don't feel like they're enough, but that's the motivation behind everything that they do. Meanwhile, they are left in some ways feeling like a victim in their own lives.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Oh my God. So a lot of perfectionists out there. Hello. So here's the million-dollar question. How do we get out of this? How do we get out of this belief?
So one really simple thing, and if you've seen enough of my work or videos, you've probably heard this before. One very simple activity that I often recommend is mirror work. Mirror work. Get up in the morning, write out your affirmation about whatever area that is, right? That is most prominent in, and say your affirmation looking in the mirror when you wake up and before you go to bed. I am enough. I am worthy. I am lovable and I am loved. Those are simple affirmations, but I really recommend people take some time and really think about what do they need to hear? What do they need someone to say to them to make them believe that they are enough? Now, what you're going to do is say it to yourself, but it might come from, okay, what did I really want my mom to say? What did I really want my boss to say? What do I want to be acknowledged for? What would make me feel like I'm enough? Right. And am I willing to say that to myself? Right. And begin to say it to yourself. Looking in a mirror is so important. And look in a mirror and do it before you put your pretty face on, right? And give yourself those affirmations in the mirror every single day. And then if you want to do some sort of measurement of it at the end of the day or at the end of the week, on a scale of 1 to 10, mark how much do you believe what you just said to yourself. And if that's a 3, that's okay. That's okay. Because you're going to measure that at the end of the week. And at the end of the week, it may still only be a 3. Measure at the end of next week. These are not about quick fixes. These are not gimmicks. These are processes that help me connect to what is really happening inside of me. Right? You don't go to the gym and lose 5 pounds in a day. I don't care how many push-ups you do. They come in increments. You didn't get to be who you are in a day. You became this way over time. And as microwave as this world is, believing that things happen instantaneous because that's how it looks on social media, that's not how it works. Remember, we talked before about your inner work. Know your inner work. When you know your inner work, you know your inner worth. So that's one of the things, small things that you can do. And then, of course, start paying attention to and engaging and embracing the concept of empowerment. Look at my work. I do a ton of work on empowerment. That's really what my work is about, including a book. And so don't leave it to chance. We do all this stuff to become materialistically successful, and we leave our inner life to chance. Right? There's a whole world that's happening inside of here. You know how many? We have billions of brain cells, and we just let them wreak havoc, run wild up in there. Right? And so take responsibility for building an inner life in the same way that you take responsibility for building your outer life. Pay attention to what's happening in here. Build a life of empowerment. So those are my recommendations.
And can you just, when you talk about empowerment, can you just go over again what you mean by that and what that really is and looks like? Because that's just such a buzzword now, and people just throwing it out there. But can you just really let people know what really is empowerment?
Empowerment is the ability to create. And it's not one thing, like it's a system. So when I talk about empowerment, I'm talking about your internal system where you have the ability to create the life that you want, right? And I'm not talking about because you have money, because there's a lot of people with money who are not empowered people. They still give control of their lives to someone else, whether it's their agent, their boss, their spouse, whoever it is. I have all this money, but I don't control my life. There are people like that. So be clear, I'm not talking about you have the money to do what you want. I'm saying you have the internal fortitude to create the life you want. So if I want to be XYZ, then I know how to develop the discipline, the fortitude, build relationships, etc., to get from here to there. I know how to get out of my own way. I know how to make things happen for me and for those around me, and perhaps for my community, in a way that is fulfilling for me without harming others and without harming myself. That's empowerment. It's not about how you look, it's about what's happening inside of you. It's not about how much money you make. It's about what are the characteristics that make you know that you are enough internally, right? So, what is the internal system that you are operating on? That is your sense of empowerment.
So when like you talk about that doing the affirmations and really doing this inner work, some of that is would be kind of considered reparenting on a certain level.
Absolutely. It could be reparenting. Yes. Well, I like those kind of fancy words again, because I like doing I think the healing and inner child work is so important. So it can be a sense of reparenting, or we can call it just deep self-care, right? Of recreating that inner world. Again, so it's not random. It's not random. How do we pay all this attention to our outer world and do nothing for our inner world?
Well, Dr. Bakari, thank you so much. Is there any last thing you want to leave us? Any last words you want to leave all of our listeners with?
Just the understanding and idea that you are enough when you don't compare. You are enough when you accept yourself for who you are and not what you can accomplish. You are enough because you're here. You're enough. What you do in this world is not a stamp to tell you your value in this world. Your value in this world is uniquely yours because you are enough first. First, your value comes before what you do. It's not that what you do creates your value. You have value because you exist. And whatever has gotten you here is good enough. Now, what you do with it is up to you, but it has nothing to do with determining your value. Your value is already set. It's set. Now, you can decide what you want your life to look like, but don't connect it to your value. You're enough.
Mhm. Thank you so much. And before we go, everybody, if you have not done it already, please give us that thumbs up. Yes, make sure you just click on that like button, subscribe, and share, share, share. Drop something in the comments. Please drop your questions, whatever in the comments. Like I said earlier, Dr. Bakari does look at the questions, does review the comments, and she can address your question on the next podcast. Everybody, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to talk with you, Dr. Singleton. Thank you.
Thank you.